With Godzilla Kong: The New Empire releasing about a month ago, we got quite a bit more information regarding the Monsterverse and how it works. On top of this, we got some more interesting information from the Monarch Apple show, and on top of that, we got a bunch of new interesting statements. So, with all that in mind, I think it's pretty clear that we can actually settle the topic between Legendary Godzilla and Final Wars Godzilla. Who would win in a fight to the death? Let's begin. I haven't made a full in-depth video on Monsterverse Godzilla for quite some time, so I'll start with him first. Due to new statements, we know that for certain, Shimo and King Ghidorah are both monsters capable of destroying the entire planet. This has been confirmed by Adam Wingard himself.
Shimo is sort of this weapon of mass destruction. She's so powerful, she can basically destroy the planet.
As well as statements in the special features of New Empire's release. On top of this, we have a previous statement regarding King Ghidorah being a consumer and destroyer of multiple planets. The Monarch show confirms that the energy coming from the Hollow Earth is powerful gamma rays. With this in mind, we can determine that the energy output of the Hollow Earth, based on its individual portals, would be at bare minimum planet level, if not all the way up to dwarf star level. This is very interesting considering that we know that Godzilla was compared to the Hollow Earth in GVK when he was weakened, and that with that power source they would create something that could rival Godzilla. While many said that this was just the energy signature and not its actual total power output, New Empire buries this completely. He absorbs an energy source from Tiamat that is stated to be an even greater energy stockpile, meaning Godzilla absorbs something as powerful, if not more, than the entire Hollow Earth, and it only boosted his power by 2 times, meaning base form Godzilla very likely does scale to the Hollow Earth, and backs up further high-end calculations from the Monsterverse. Ghidorah was stated able to wipe out the surface of the planet, and should he have done it with the same sort of energy signature that Earth Kaiju have, this would also be a large planet to dwarf star level feat. Shimo, also in the past, previously covered Greenland in ice in a matter of mere minutes. Due to her absolute zero freezing, this would get Shimo to a minimum of small planet level per second, with the feat being large planet level in general. It is confirmed that Shimo used her freezing powers to their max to halt King Ghidorah's planet-destroying rampage, with her covering most of Antarctica in the last ice age. Godzilla in the past and currently is able to battle Shimo and King Ghidorah, both in his base form and with his amps, so he should just scale to them. It's also been stated previously that Godzilla's atomic breath is nature's most devastating weapon, and was able to match Shimo's beam, meaning he would bare minimum scale to at least small planet level, if not higher. With the gamma rays in mind, one can interpret that this statement would include a gamma ray burst of at least similar size, which would also get Legendary's atomic breath to at least large planet level. What about Final Wars Godzilla? As I covered in the video from November, Final Wars Godzilla has also gotten an increase in power, with statements of him being at least a planet buster being pretty consistent in the movie, and him being stated more powerful than any weapon on Earth, which would probably include the sealed away Gigan and humanity's collective weaponry that they were going to use to destroy the alleged planet Gorath, a hypothetical feat which would get humanity to at least Planet Plus, and they were unable to kill Godzilla. In fact, it was their last chance. The Exilian invasion wiped out most of humanity's forces, so you could say at least their collective, which is mostly composed of Gigan at that point, would at least be planet level. And Godzilla could one-shot his head with a single blast, and not even using his full strength. He only does that against Monster X, a monster even stronger than himself. With that in mind, we can say that he is at least a planet buster in his base form, if not scaling already into large planet level, just by this upscaling. That noted, we can directly compare this to Monsterverse Godzilla, and see that if you take any of the higher end statements and feats directly, the new fella has a substantial power advantage. At their lower ends though, they are fairly comparable, both being planet busters But I do think Monsterverse Godzilla would have an edge if you put a gun to my head, even then, considering his planet has the hollow earth, which generates insane gravity and energy, compared to Final Wars', which just seems to be a normal planet Earth. Final Wars has the interesting ability to grow stronger as he fights, but this would still unlikely be able to close the power gap entirely. He goes from being so much weaker than Monster X that his full power attacks can't even scratch him, to being strong enough to clobber him with just his fists. And as we see later in the fight, the difference between punches and atomic breath blasts is easily a one-shot for this version. While bites could be taken, his blast would still probably vaporize you. So that means Final Wars may be able to get 10 times stronger in the middle of a fight, but even with that in mind, it wouldn't be enough to close the power gap without an edge in speed. The Monsterverse has gotten pretty concretely to the relativistic to light speed ranges, if not faster. Godzilla's atomic breath is composed of Cherenkov radiation, which moves at 75% the speed of light in space, but faster than light in water, and almost the speed of light in air. Notable, because Kong can react, dodge, and block the blast, and King Ghidorah could also dodge the blast, although he did see Godzilla charging it up. Mechagodzilla's proton scream is about 2.6 times faster than Godzilla's blast. Shimo's beam was also able to be dodged by Kong multiple times, and that beam was able to lock with the atomic breath and is called her own atomic breath, so it could be comparable in speed. Evolved Godzilla is stated to be faster by an unquantifiable amount, but he doesn't really seem to be much of an increase, since he goes from slower than Kong to slower than Kong. Kong's gotten a bit faster, but without any numbers, we can't really say how much. Final Wars Godzilla is a lot faster though. He was able to perceive a meteor moving 67% the speed of light as slow. So slow, in fact, that he can make a grand show of charging up his full power beam. So since Legendary has the advantage of power, and Final Wars has the advantage of speed, how would this play out? Well, in sheer probability, it would mean that Final Wars can hit Legendary upwards of at least twice, if not as much, 20 times, before Legendary could even react. This would mean a worse speed blitz than what Mechagodzilla gave him, and so would be even harder for Legendary to react. Although, that said, the blows would be less powerful. But you could argue chip damage, especially since Final Wars is most likely a superior hand-to-hand combatant than Legendary's Mechagodzilla is. Or Kong, for that matter. Though Godzilla did hold back on Kong and was weakened against Mechagodzilla, it still seems that mostly the difference between them was power-based, and that Godzilla was just going to stop them with raw force. You could argue he could do the same to Final Wars in that respect. Since Final Wars is even faster than Kong and Mechagodzilla, this would be much harder to do. Legendary would have to play it smart. He would have to wait for the right opportunity or opening. Final Wars doesn't really dodge, except in the short films, but so what we have to work off would lead to Legendary being hit a lot of times trying to land blows that would deal heavy damage to Final Wars. Confronting him head on would be almost as bad as when he got though not quite as much if you take the statement that Kaiser Ghidorah is like star level. That said though, if you go with more ridiculous ends, Legendary will stomp hard. He's still solar system, while Final Wars is maybe star level. If you go with Final Wars at uni with infinite power, then Legendary also has infinite power for Mechagodzilla, who could not even really beat a very low power Legendary Godzilla. So if you go with stupid, it doesn't really help either. So Final's best shot is mass abusing atomic breath and speed to try and wear Legendary down. If Legendary lands a good hit though, chances are he could end the fight, because he has the ability to bypass durability with his specific radiation. He's more powerful than Final Wars by a good amount, and he can even nullify regeneration as good as that of the Shinomura, which is able to grow back from a single cell. So base to base, Final Wars would lose. But what about at their full power? So if Final Wars tries to overload, he would have to hit Legendary a lot more than he would before. And on top of this, Evolved Godzilla is also faster with thicker skin, And of course we see in New Empire he can absorb nuclear radiation actively from sources like power plants, and it's not unreasonable that with such a large gap in power he could absorb energy from Final Wars directly. It should be noted that the same sort of terminology is used for this evolved Godzilla and after he was powered up by the nuke, so we could say that these two transformations are roughly comparable in power. They do have their differences though. The nuked state continues to increase in power at an exponential rate, so much that even Godzilla would blow up and die from it, whereas the evolved form has the aforementioned abilities as well as adaptive thermoregulation, most likely to deal with Shimo's frostbite blast. On top of this, it's more stable and won't blow up from this level of power. It can also power itself up even further to use a spiral beam stated in the novelization to yield higher energy than any that was previously recorded from him, which would include the nuke state, although he doesn't start with this level of power, and it is stated to push his body to its limits. So of course, if either of these two amplified states face base Final Wars, he is obviously going to die. Pretty simply. While he has a great speed advantage, skill edge, etc., he doesn't have the power to deal with these transformations. But, seeing as he could absorb energy even in a severely weakened state from Kaiser Ghidorah, who could easily one-shot his base form, even after it was powered up, into a state called Heavenly Godzilla, in which not only did he reverse blitz Kaiser Ghidorah, but also gained so much power that the blast that one-shot him could barely do any damage, this should turn the tide pretty quickly, especially with the increased speed edge, as well as massive amp and power. Kaiser Ghidorah is stated in Toho's official new website to have cosmic classes of firepower. This terminology is only used for monsters that have star-busting capability, so with Kaiser Ghidorah having the same sort of range of power as legendary Godzilla's high-end for base and his transformations, on top of having an even greater speed boost, let's see how this amped Final Wars fares against him. Oh, would you look at that. Yeah, so while Kaiser is more of a glass cannon than legendary Godzilla is, Final War still dispatches him pretty quickly. And now if legendary tries to absorb his energy, Final can just reverse it. And unfortunately, for our American friend, Final isn't done yet. His most powerful attack, the Burn G-Spark Heat Ray, produced an explosion over 20,000 times powerful than the one he did in his amplified normal blue beam. This bumps his attack potency all the way up to star level, and if you accept Kaiser at star level, then he would easily one-shot any of these forms of legendary Godzilla with absolutely no difficulty. We move on to the final match. Burning Legendary versus Heavenly Final. Since some find the 100 times multiplier statement from the novel to be iffy, we'll stick with the movie's internal scaling. The novelization for New Empire confirms that Shimo and King Ghidorah are in a similar level of power. This is backed up by Shimo's character designer, Jared Krukowski, confirming that Shimo vs Ghidorah is a pretty even match. With this in mind, we can then say that base Ghidorah and base Shimo, who can match even supercharged Pink, are in a similar tier. Interesting, because then we have nuked Godzilla being able to pressure base Ghidorah, to which base Ghidorah then gets a power up so large he's able to deal with Godzilla in 2 hits, even able to snap his dorsal plates and cause immense agony simply by biting him. He then drains Godzilla for over 2 minutes, gaining a nearly 30 times higher increase than he did from the power plant. Then this super amped Ghidorah is 3-shot by Burning Godzilla, who is in fact weakened because Ghidorah was the one draining his energy. This yields a multiplier of at least 480 times for Burning Legendary. Burning Legendary is actually star level himself, and now he has a pulse attack which can range from at least a few kilometers to being able to blow up Ghidorah's continent-sized storm, depending if you take certain statements for it at face value. This would in turn mean that Final Wars' massive speed advantage doesn't allow him to escape this incredible level of force. Though, one could argue he could try to overload Legendary and cause him to blow up and die. That said, if burning is formed onto this new base form, which has increased energy capacity, it may be actually impossible for Final Wars to blow him up, because he could simply maintain or use the energy back through his nuclear pulses, as he did with King Ghidorah. This is an interesting battle, but I do believe Legendary does win this one.